Hello and welcome. And joining me today on the All About the Balls Sports Podcast is a very special guest and hostage and willing volunteer who is Maddie from Melbourne down in Australia, who has kindly volunteered to be our AFL aficionado and introduce us to the amazing sport of Aussie Rules. Maddie, are you there?
I sure am. I sort of feel like I have to say good day to everyone just to totally Aussie it up, but thanks for having me.
Yeah. I mean, we all assume you are there wearing a hat with corks on strings, probably cuddling an inflatable kangaroo.
Rode a kangaroo home from work, as we all do every day.
Brilliant. That's good. Yeah, that we can tell now you're an official Aussie, you're an authentic Aussie, so that's good. So you are allowed to talk about AFL. But before we dig in, how are you? How are you doing?
Yeah, doing great, thank you. Doing great.
Very nice. So it's summertime down there at the moment. So a lot of our listeners, I say a lot of them, there's like 4 of them, but they are in the Northern Hemisphere. So we're going through the bleak winter. So is it nice weather down there at the moment?
I mean, yeah, you say summertime, but I do live in Melbourne. So they very much say 4 seasons in one day. So we've sort of had our really hot summer days of sort of 40 plus degrees Celsius. And now we're sort of just cooling out a bit. We've got some humidity, but a bit of rain, but generally pretty nice. I mean, it's probably early to mid 20s pretty consistently, which is probably summer for you guys.
Yeah, all right, funny girl. Don't you can leave the weather jokes till later. But before people get confused and think they've dialed into a weather podcast, we are actually here to talk about Aussie Rules, AFL. So AFL is not a very well-known sport up here in the UK, although there are a few clubs sort of dotted around. But I used to live in Melbourne, and I was always quite a big fan. So I thought it would be interesting to spread the word of AFL, and who better to help us understand the game than your good self. So without wanting to ask you to go into all the sort of all the nooks and crannies, what on earth is AFL?
That is not as easy a question as it sort of leads everyone to believe. For a bit of fun, I sort of posted a tweet and said, guys, if you had to explain it to an international crowd, in a couple of sentences, what would you do? The resounding sort of answer was, it's not possible. Other stuff I got was, it's just Quidditch with extra steps.
Nice.
And basically, yeah, that was sort of the general consensus. It's not the easiest thing to explain, I guess. The main thing is we do call it Aussie Rules Football. But I'll have a crack at explaining it. But basically, apart from it being the greatest sport in the world, it contains a couple of teams of about 18 players on the field, plus another 4 on the bench, who basically compete to score points, kicking an oval-shaped ball through a set of goalposts on either side end of a large oval. So players can pass the ball. We do call it football here, but they can handball it, they can kick it. They can't throw it though, so any sort of rugby moves won't fly in this sport.
Right. Okay. You can pass, like in rugby, you can only pass like sideways or backwards. In AFL, you can pass anywhere.
Correct. You can play moves forward, backwards, side, all around the 360 degrees of the field. There's no sort of restriction there. That's right.
Yeah. Okay.
But basically, it's a pretty fast-paced game, so it's always one of those ones that you sort of can try to explain to people, but then you end up getting a video out on YouTube and going, just watch it, just check it out.
It is one of those things, isn't it? Where it's kind of like you say, you describe it, but it's actually easy just to go get out your phone, AFL greatest highlights on YouTube, and so like that's it.
Absolutely. I always love showing it to Americans because they just sort of look at me in horror and they just go, are they not wearing any padding?
Yeah.
Like madmen. So,
they must.
no, so I always enjoy showing people highlights.
Yes. Now, okay. So that's a good intro to the game, but I've got a couple of questions if that's all right. So, how does the league work? How many teams in the league?
Yeah, so the actual league itself, so that's what AFL is. So it's the Australian Football League. It's the professional men's competition. slash also obviously the league body who control all the rules and, bloody change it every 2 seconds. It's been running in some form since about 1896 and even earlier than that. Renamed itself to AFL in 1990. It sort of developed into a national comp from what was a Victorian football league, so just in this state. Yeah. We've got 18 teams that are spread across 5 of Australia's 6 states, and it's been played in every state and territory in Australia, as well as a couple of places internationally. So we've got a 22-round, what we call home and away season. So it's 23 rounds with a bye, but each team plays 22 games, between the games in the end. Runs from March through to September. So it is a winter sport for us, even though they wear short shorts and effectively tank tops.
I mean, I was going to say, and this is worth pointing out, very short shorts, worryingly tight.
Yeah. I mean, I'm not complaining. But yes, they do. Sometimes they'll sort of, some of the players will wear long sleeves, but yes, the short shorts do remain a standard across the board. But as I said, not.
It's it is like a sort of a 1970s advert that hasn't sort of changed and evolved with time.
Yeah, and I must say the mullets are making a comeback too. Really? So it's sort of looking right out of the 70s at the moment. Yeah, strong unfortunately.
Strong play from the footy guys. Interesting. Okay, so there's in AFL. Do you have promotion and relegation, or is there just the one league?
No, we don't. So I was actually chatting to one of my mates today, who's actually from London as well. And we were talking about West Ham, and them probably being relegated.
Yes.
He's annoyed at me because I told him the Liverpool score when it was in its progress, and then obviously didn't end up going the way we hoped it would. On the bad books, but I texted back and I said I get why you didn't want to watch it. But no, we don't have relegation. We have a second sort of league in every state. So in Victoria, AFL, Victorian Football League, SA, South Australia, we've got the South Australian Football League. So we've got sort of iterations, but no, teams don't get relegated, even though some of them probably should be.
Well, look, we'll come on to where your passions and hatred lie in terms of teams. But so in England, a lot of the sports here, particularly football, when you win the league at the end of the season, if you're number one at the end of the season in the league, you've won the title, and you get the big parade and all that kind of stuff. Is that the same in AFL? Like if you come top of the league at the end of the regular season, are you the champions?
No.
Of course.
To make it even more complicated. No.
So how the hell do we win this thing? Yeah.
So what happens is if you finish on top, great, well done you. You're what we call the minor premiers.
Right.
But it doesn't really mean anything.
The
top 8 teams play off.
Yeah.
The top 8 teams play off in final series. I mean, the advantage of finishing in the top 4 is you get an additional chance. So you get sort of either if you win your first round, you get a bye the next week while other teams fight it out. Or if you lose, you get a second chance. So we play, it's just the top 8 that sort of go through to the final.
Yeah.
Battles it out to the final 2, through sort of a knockout round, sort of type thing. And then the final game's played at the Melbourne Cricket Ground, which is obviously quite famous, holds a little over 100,000 people. So just that small little ground. And then, our sort of ultimate winner of the last 2 teams are called the Premiers and are awarded Premiership Cup.
Yeah, I mean, so
and parades and all that sort of stuff.
Yeah, like I mean, I've been lucky enough to be at a grand final, and they are amazing, aren't they? Like it's the biggest day of the year.
Yeah, it's huge. I actually went to my first one last year.
Oh, amazing!
So I never gone to one. And then one of my mates was playing one of the teams, so I actually got to go. They got absolutely smashed, so it wasn't the best sort of intro.
Yeah.
But it's a fantastic day. It's just, I think, just the atmosphere. I mean, all of Melbourne sort of transforms in that week. Even if it's two interstate teams facing off. Last year it was one sort of Melbourne team versus an interstate team, and it was just an awesome sort of atmosphere. It's a really great event. So that's very cool that you've been to as many as I have, and I live here.
But like you say, I mean, 'cause you said earlier that the sport is played around the country, but it's definitely like Melbourne is an absolute AFL powerhouse, isn't it? Like that's where the sport is.
Yeah,
nothing
absolutely.
Else.
So back when it first started, I mean, it was the VFL, and then the VFL, and then before that was the VFA. So it's always been a Victorian sort of base league in its infancy. And then the majority of the teams are naturally from Victoria. But we sort of we've added a few other teams. We've let them join our comp, and we've made it the Australian Football League. But very much the heartland of Aussie Rules footy is Victoria.
So okay, quick question though. You were just saying earlier. So there's 18 teams in the league, and 8 teams make finals. So you can have a totally average season and still get a shot at the big show.
Correct. You can. And there have been teams that have sort of won it from 6th and 7th on the ladder, and quite recently. So, I think that they always tend to be the most exciting games, that sort of bottom 4, because they're elimination rounds. So if you lose, you're out. So they tend to be a lot more exciting because it's your one shot.
Yeah.
So I actually prefer to watch that sort of bottom 4 and that 8 playoff in finals than the top 4, because you just never know what you're going to get.
That's interesting. Actually, here that would be I've gone back and forth on this one. There's part of me, I guess, maybe like growing up in England, where like you have the league, and if you win the league, you're the winner. You've done everything. You've battled for 20 odd rounds, and you're the winners. And so for a long time,
I mean, I guess it makes sense.
Yeah, like God, what more do I have to do to actually pick up the trophy? But then actually, having been through a bit of Aussie sport, like with AFL and the NRL do the same thing, and the Super Rugby do the same thing, there is something that I'm actually quite like now about these final series at the end of it. And I think I'm on board with it now.
Yeah, it's really cool, and I think we have teams that sort of a bit like what Leicester did over there, where you sort of don't really rate them as with a shot before the season starts, and they sort of have this miracle season, like the Western Bulldogs, who finished in that lower part of the top 8, and they went on to win the cup. So I think you get those really awesome stories, and for them it had been 50 years or something since they'd last won one, so might even be more, but I think you get those really special sort of narratives that end up happening. I think it feels almost anticlimactic to give it to the team that finished first, and the team that finished first last year did not end up winning overall. So it definitely makes for some interesting games, that's for sure.
Okay, so look, you started mentioning a few teams there, so let's dig into the teams. Now, you have one true love, is that right?
I do.
So
I do.
Total bias, totally subjective. Who is your team?
My team are the North Melbourne Kangaroos. So it's very easy to get international people to go for them because they're the Kangaroos. So I've recruited many over my time. But so I've been a member for 21 years this year.
Oh, wow.
So most of my life. I've barracked for them for most of my life. I did support another team until I was 4, but I don't like to talk about that.
Hang on, who is that? Who is that?
I barracked for, well, I didn't actively barrack for them, but it was thrust upon me by my parents. Their agreement was if they had boys, they would go for North Melbourne like my dad did. And if they had girls, they would go for St Kilda like my mum did. So I defected when I was 4 because I got sick of being told they had lost. and North Melbourne had won. So it was apparently that simple. So we won premiership in 96 and 99. So I actually got to at least experience it, and I'm just old enough to at least remember the 99 one. But it's funny because St Kilda have ended up being, they're not my most hated team, but they're definitely not my favourite. But they are sort of in the area that I grew up in as well, so it sort of makes sense. A lot of people assume I'm St Kilda, but no, I did respect.
Right. Okay. So North Melbourne, how would you, if you were trying to describe them, like what's the sort of the personality of the club?
Oh, I think they're a real family club, and they're a real close club. I think I always think, a lot of sporting clubs can feel like a family, but North Melbourne in particular, there's been a couple of attempts by the Australian Football League to relocate us to other states.
Really?
So we do, yeah. So I think that was the most recent one was in 2000, sort of around 2007. They wanted us to go and play on the Gold Coast and be what is now the Gold Coast Suns, what would be called the Gold Coast Kangaroos.
Oh my God.
So we're not a club, we're a tight club because I think we've had a lot of adversity. It's not a particularly nice feeling to have your club sort of attempt to be wiped out because you're not sort of big enough. So I think it's a really lovely club, and we're a really tough club. And I think especially this year, or this last year, and for a while really, we've been a really tough team on the field, which I love because it's a very fast-paced contact sport. But yeah, it's a really sort of tough club. We've sort of been through a lot of adversities, and we're still here. So I remember reading a really famous quote, and it sort of said, when all life on earth gets obliterated, there'll be two things remaining, and it'll be, cockroaches in the North Melbourne Football Club. And it's so true. They've tried to kill us so many times because they just sort of have doubted us. But, keep proving them wrong. So we're a really strong club now because of it. And we've got a really sort of good quality supporter base. Well.
Yeah. Okay, so help us out. I was thinking about this. Like, we've got three guys on the show. There's myself, there's Gareth, and there's Boyce. Yeah. We all need teams.
Yes.
And
Melbourne.
Sure. What if we don't want to be like cockroaches? What are the other options for us? Like, give us a few clubs that we could maybe barrack for. Or
I notice a lot of Poms love St Kilda, and I think that's because that's a very sort of tourist destination. In and around Melbourne. So I have noticed a lot of people, but other than that, they normally jump on the bandwagon of who sort of won the premiership the last. So
always good.
Richmond Football Club. Have won a couple in the last 3 years, so they're quite a popular one to jump on a bandwagon for.
And they've been, because when I was over there, they were definitely, I'm trying to think of they were kind of like, I think that's the polite way of putting it, like absolutely shit house. But like so to see them coming good and winning in the last few seasons, that's been quite a turnaround for them, right?
Oh, absolutely. I think, they had a 37-year drought, which is not the longest in the competition by any means. But I think, to sort of come back from that, they were sort of known as for a while, even though it wasn't particularly true, as sort of being that team that would finish ninth, that would always just miss out on the finals, be that sort of mediocre team that was good but wasn't quite good enough to make it. When you were here, they were probably even worse.
Yeah.
They've really turned it around. As I said, that they've won twice in the last 3 years. Highly likely to win again this year. So, so they've done very well. Much to my distaste because I have a lot of mates that go to them, and they have been absolutely insufferable. But I'd probably be the same. Yeah.
Okay, so we've got St Kilda, you got Richmond. Give us one more that we should consider going for.
Oh, I have a soft spot for Greater Western Sydney. The Giants. They're quite a new team.
Okay.
But they're a really great team. They've got a really good midfield. They made the grand final last year. As I said, they've really not been around for that long. But they've got some really good, classy players. And they're one of those teams that, when North aren't travelling super well, it's always nice to watch them. They're so smooth, and you sort of look at them and go, that's the skills I want in my team. They had a lot of top draft picks given to them when they were set up, so that, they should be really great. But they've had a lot of players leave and sort of want to come home to Victoria. So credit to them. They've sort of traded well and picked well and got the depth. But I think they're quite great to watch. They had a lot of injuries last year though, so pretty cruel end to their season. But I find I've had a couple of American mates jump on their bandwagon as sort of the newer team in the last few years. But that would be that'd be my other pick, and they should be up there again this year. So it's always nice to follow a successful team.
Yeah. Okay, so Richmond, GWS, or St Kilda. Now, who should we definitely not follow? Because like when I was there was always the big. When I was there, it was St Kilda and Collingwood were up the top. Geelong were doing well. The Hawks were doing well. But the jokes were always about the Collingwood fans. Like, what do you call a Collingwood fan in a suit? The defendant. And they were just proper hated by everybody else.
Yeah.
Even themselves a little bit, I think. There was a little bit.
Yeah.
So who should we definitely steer clear of?
Collingwood's a pretty good one. I'm very impressed that you've had the right education.
Yeah,
I don't find their fans the worst anymore.
Really?
I think there's a few other teams that are just as bad, and I think Richmond's one of them. But I think Collingwood's a pretty safe one to go with if you sort of want to acclimate to Aussie Rules football in Victoria at least. I sort of have teams that I dislike, and some of it not of my own volition. North Melbourne had a really fierce sort of rivalry with the Hawthorn Football Club in the 70s. That's sort of a fault of my father that I can't stand them. But it doesn't help that, they sort of dominated, in, sort of early mid 2010. So they won 4 premierships in 8 years. They went back to back 3 times. They had a 3-peat. So it's very easy to sort of hate teams that are doing very well.
Yeah.
North Melbourne. I mean, we hate Essendon. We hate the Essendon Football Club. So I won't tell you why, because I'll be here for hours. But we'll put them on there. Not that list.
They had a big scandal a few years ago, didn't they? There was like some big doping scandal.
They were.
I mean, you don't want to use the word cheating bastards, but they were done, weren't they?
They got involved in everything. It was quite a big thing. Their supporters will still defend them to this day.
Sure.
And to this day, I still say if that happened to the North Melbourne Football Club, they would have wiped us out the second they find out. So I think Essendon, they're such a big club, so they're never sort of going to go under. But that's still, it's still spoken about a lot, and it's still in our media, and they're still fighting it. And we obviously had, there was a player that won what we call the Brownlow, which is sort of, the best and fairest player across the competition. And he got stripped of that subsequently because of that scandal. So they're still, it's still definitely relevant. But, they also haven't made finals for a really, really long time. So, so everyone enjoys getting stuck into them for that. There is a Twitter account that every day posts how many days it's been since the Essendon Football Club won a final.
Amazing.
I don't know if you've seen it. It's quite popular here, but today they're up to 5,652.
You said that with a real smile in your voice.
10.5 years, yeah. So they keep telling me they're winning the premiership, but I keep telling them I've got to win a final first. So we'll chuck them on there too.
Okay, so speaking of which, who should we be looking out for then this season?
I think as much as it pains me to say it, as I said earlier, Richmond, they're just such a dominant team. They end up playing 14 of their games, of the 22 games of the season at their home ground.
Oh, wow.
Including the grand final is also at their home ground. So it's sort of tough to go up against them, especially for an interstate team. They've lost a couple of players through retirement and trade, but I think they showed last year they've got quite a good depth to their list. so it shouldn't have too much of an impact. They're dead set the favourites to go back-to-back this year, so they'd be up there. As I said, GWS, so Great Western Sydney Giants, they made the grand final last year, but unfortunately for them, were severely depleted in their list. They had a hell of a lot of players out injured, and ended up getting annihilated in the grand final. So if they can make it with a full-strength side, they'll absolutely threaten Richmond. And then my other one would be West Coast Eagles. So they won a couple of years ago, so they're not far from it. They're over in Western Australia and based in Perth.
Okay.
They've picked up some handy players, so they could absolutely threaten again next year as well. So they'd be sort of my three sort of to watch, and you'll probably find that they're probably the favourites.
And of course,
in everything you read as well.
Of course, the mighty Kangaroos.
Obviously, I mean, yeah. I was going to say that, obviously, North Melbourne. I mean, look, I sort of had this conversation, and I said something on Twitter a couple of weeks ago about this. Every team should be going into the season to win the premiership. If you're thinking any differently, why are we all here? That's the main goal. That's what we're all playing for. Doesn't matter if you finish top of the ladder or bottom of the ladder. Every team should be aiming for that. And I think that's sort of coming into, coaches' vernacular a bit more, that they're sort of talking about it a bit more and saying, that's why we're here, which is really great, because it is, as a member or as a supporter, you want your team to go, yeah, we're gunning for this.
Yeah.
So I think that's really great. And, as I said, there's 18 teams in the comp, only one win. So there's 17 teams that fail every year at that main goal. So absolutely, North Melbourne Premiers 2020.
Yeah.
Our last one was in 99. Let's do this. It's been far too long. I'm
You're
suffering.
due. You're surely due.
So,
and who? I mean, obviously not the Kangaroos, but who is? Who do? I mean, sure, everyone should be going in with optimism and whatever, but who do you think is going to really struggle this year? Who's going to be propping up the ladder?
Struggle. Yeah. I mean, there's a sort of easy one that's been there the last few years. So the Gold Coast Suns, they're a fairly new team as well. They sort of get all the top draft picks every year because they bottom out. But they all tend to leave because they all sort of want to, they're in Queensland and everyone wants to come home to Victoria and Melbourne and play, in front of these big crowds and for these teams that these guys grew up supporting and these more successful teams, which is understandable. So the AFL has sort of been propping them up every year. They keep finishing last. They started strongly last year, but they faded out quite quickly and ended up bottom. I mean, they did actually, we've got pre-season happening at the moment. And they did actually smash the team that finished the top of the ladder last year.
Wow.
But pre-season's always a bit different because you throw up sort of players that probably won't play, but still that was quite enjoyable for a lot of us. I think the Gold Coast Suns are the main one that will sort of the bottom out. They're the easy pick anyway.
Yeah. So, actually, I mean, on that then, because like you've mentioned the Suns and the Giants, who are two teams that were actually sort of introduced to the league relatively recently.
Yeah.
And so, is that very common in AFL? That like the sort of the powers that be will actually start trying to expand and grow the competition?
Yes, I think a lot of the teams have naturally sort of come up from their own state competitions to be added.
Yeah.
GWS and the Gold Coast Suns are a bit of a different sort of kettle of fish, I guess. The AFL wanted to grow the sport in two states, being New South Wales and Queensland, that aren't typically sort of Aussie Rules footy heartland. So they tend to sort of gravitate to rugby league. So they're big rugby league states. So you'll find in Australia, it's quite funny. You can say football and it can mean a number of different things, depending on what state you're in.
Really?
Yeah. So they wanted to add, So, I mean, football here in Melbourne, it's a tricky one. It's predominantly Aussie Rules Football, but it could also be rugby league. It could also be soccer, what you guys call football. Then, New South Wales, Queensland, you say football, you're calling league. So
right. Okay.
But, so Gold Coast Suns and GWS, they were sort of founded around 2009. So it's been quite interesting watching that trajectory, because we've had GWS who have been up the top of the ladder for the last few years. And, they both entered the comp, and, if you played them twice in a year, you're like, that's automatically wins.
You
tick them off already without even having played a game. They just were down there for that long. So, they've done the hard yards, but as I said, the trajectory has been quite interesting, because GWS are up there, as I said, made the grand final last year, consistently playing finals. Gold Coast Suns, bottom of the ladder pretty consistently since they've entered the comp. So
can the AFL Can the AFL kick them out? Can they wrap them up and say, look, this just isn't working?
They can. I think the Gold Coast Suns is a contentious one. As I said, that was meant to be North Melbourne.
Yeah.
So they were quite insistent on having a team up there. They already have the Brisbane Lions, who were also another team that actually did get relocated from Melbourne. So they sort of, setting up a whole new team is difficult, especially in a market that doesn't typically lean to Aussie Rules Footy and prefers rugby league.
Yeah.
But I think our current CEO is one of the people that started the Gold Coast Suns.
Oh.
So I think while he's still around, I don't think they'll call it a failure. They'll keep plugging away. As I said, they keep giving them concessions. They keep giving them top draft picks. That's not their problem, the talent. It's retaining it. So I think they need to get some, more senior players in that sort of, aren't being offered contracts at their current club.
Yeah.
But still think they have a year or two in them. And sort of get some older guys to sort of get a bit of a better group together. But yeah, it will be interesting. I think, everyone's sort of watching with interest, because there's quite a push for Tasmania to have a team now. So it'll be interesting to see where it goes.
Oh, happy.
Yeah, so which is fair enough. They want their own team. They don't want to reject teams. So at the moment, my team and the Hawthorn Football Club, we both play 3 games in Tasmania.
Yeah.
In a couple of different parts, so in Hobart and Launceston. So they've tested out the market. People are interested. It's always fascinating going to a game down there. I try to get to one a season.
Yeah.
And it's always interesting because you sort of go to a game and, it will be North Melbourne versus GWS, but then you've got scarves from, people wearing scarves and caps and beanies from, 8, 10 different other teams, because, having not had their own team, they've sort of already picked other teams, and they love footy. Footy's in the States. So, that's sort of a bit of a very relevant sort of talking point at the moment, because they're really pushing for a team, and they want to build a team. They don't want a relocated team. So I think if the Suns fail, that would be their first attempt, is they would just relocate them down to Tassie. But I'm not sure they get the buy-in from everyone down there. They want a born and bred Tassie team, which is fair enough.
I'm not sure. Yeah, I'm not sure the Tasmanians are going to want the Gold Coast rejects, are they?
No, that's right. So, but yeah, it's interesting. It's a lovely part of the world, but very, very different to, all the other cities that they play AFL in. So it would be interesting to see what sort of talent they could retain down there. As I said, beautiful part of the world, not the most exciting part of the world. And I can say that because I'm half Tasmanian, but I think, it'd be interesting to see. I think, people have legitimate concerns about them having a team. So it'll be interesting to see how that plays out. But I think they've sort of putting the pressure on the AFL now and saying, you've got a few years to get those other 2 teams out of there. We want our own team. So I'll be watching that with interest.
Great. Well, look, Maddie, thank you so much indeed. You've been incredibly generous with your time, and hopefully that's given everybody a really good introduction to AFL and given us a couple of teams to pick for the season ahead. Look, hope you go well. Hope the Roos deliver that premiership for you.
Thank you. I hope so too. If not, you'll find me somewhere crying. So.
Yes, follow Maddie on Twitter to follow her emotions during the season.
Yes, and then quickly unfollow me because it's so annoying.
Not at all. Well, look, Maddie, thank you very much indeed, and maybe we can check in with you halfway through the season to get a mid-season report.
Sounds great. I'd love to. Thanks so much for having me.
Thanks. Take care. Go well.
Thank you. Bye.